It's really early on January 6th, 2026, and I'm recording this for historical record keeping as well as to let people know who see me on TikTok or on the YouTube channel that I'm going to use the channel for more educational purposes going forward. So you'll see some of that coming out. But what I wanted to talk about today was um, I woke up really early because my dog was throwing up, and I just couldn't go back to sleep. I started thinking about January 6th, 5 years ago, and how it happened, and where we are today, and how we got here the last 10 years. It just like my mind just kept going, and really like January 6th, like my husband and I were both like super fortunate that we were able to work from home and not lose our jobs and all of those things, and I just remember both of us being at the house, standing there watching the television. I mean, not even being able to work because we were just like in shock of what was happening at the Capitol. It was clear to me then, and it's still clear to me now, that Trump enabled this, wanted this. He wanted to stay in power, and he is a traitor to our country. And what is clear to me in his second term is all of the people who he has enabled to give power. Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, you name it, Tom Homan, whatever, all of these people that are committing, atrocities and stuffing their pockets with money, and, like Tom Homan taking a bag of cash from Kava. In a not from Kava, but in a Kava bag. Um, every single one of them is using this as a way to stuff their pockets and really to be part of what we are living in today, which is the Trump presidency reality show. So they all know that their job is to create content and, get out there and push the content. So I don't know about you, but at this point, 10 years in from his initial election, I am so exhausted talking about this stupid orange, you know what I'm going to say, MFer. Um, I'm tired of it. I'm I'm sure a lot of Americans are tired of it. And I think what we need to figure out is as Americans is where we are today, which is where he's waging war on countries, and he's basically trying to isolate America with tariffs. He's been attacking, verbally our allies the entire year, and even prior to that in his previous presidency, um, threatening to invade our allies like Denmark, Greenland, and Canada, and all these different things that he's doing. Um, I think we need to figure out, like, what do we want out of our country as Americans, and what are we going to do to put in place that this shit doesn't happen again? Because I can tell you one thing, Trump's not going to make it, like, forever. He's an old man. He's an old man who is hateful, racist. I mean, it's all, check, check, check. And he's not personally going to live forever. So he's not going to be like Putin, where he can stay in power for decades. But he's trying to create America in the way Putin created Russia, where you have oligarchs who, which is our tech bros, and they have all kinds of money and power, and and then there's someone at the head. Well, the problem is, like, he's not going to physically make it forever. So the people who are behind him in this movement are all hoping to be the next one in line. But we as Americans have to start pushing back on that, and we have to start figuring out, what do we want out of our country? Like, stop being passive observers of how this is going, because I get why he was elected in 2016. People were frustrated. Things haven't been great for a lot of Americans, and we have, Democrats just as much as Republicans that are trading stocks in Congress and, basically insider trading while the rest of us are at the mercy of the stock market with our entire retirement funds. So I completely understand, some of the frustration, the healthcare frustration. I have the same one. And then same thing, people go in Congress and they have this great healthcare plan, which none of us are able to have. They get pensions, all of these things that like used to be something that we had as American workers that all went away. So with that said, um, I've really been doing some thinking, and because I'm pursuing a PhD in misinformation and I have a master's in communication and leadership, I've been reading a lot about misinformation, and I've been looking back to the last 10 years. And I really feel like that is the number one issue because we are in an attention economy right now. And whether we like it or not, whether we try to disengage from it or not, that's what we're in. Um, and all of our news is being affected by misinformation. The COVID pandemic there was so much like, so much false information that was spread during the COVID pandemic that people weren't taking the vaccine and, all of these things, on and on and on. But it's really the number one issue is we have to start putting checks and balances on social media. We have to start putting, laws around our news, so that we can't have like the Fox Newses and the Newsmaxes or whatever the next version of it, which is basically state media. We can't have that. We have to really start putting some checks and balances there. And, and then we have to start thinking about other things that, what do we want out of our government? Do we want elected officials to be able to trade stocks? I mean, I don't think anybody wants that. I think the majority of Americans don't want that. Do we want the billionaires in our country? Why do you think America has more billionaires than any other country? It's because we don't tax these fuckers enough. Do we want them to get even more power and be able to buy more politicians? I mean, Elon Musk spent like $250 million on the presidential election to get power. So do we want that? I mean, none of that is normal. So these are the things that we want, that I think we as Americans have to start thinking about. I mean, these are things that are keeping me up at night as an American, is that, we're in this Trump president reality show day after day that is impossible to escape unless you're not watching any news or paying attention to anything, because even if you aren't on social media, you're engaging with it because it's being reported on news sources. So unless you're exclusively trying to, cherry pick and read the news, we're all in the reality show. And to me, if we're going to be in this show, we need to make sure that the information that is being shared is factual, and there are guardrails around that. And other countries have put guardrails on social media. So with that said, on a social media platform, that's where I'm going to be putting my focus on my on future videos on education of, what we want out of our government, on misinformation, which is my topic of study, and we'll go from there. But January 6th, and Trump is a traitor.